Provision of President Obama's health care law was struck down this week. A federal judge ruled that under the Constitution, the federal government does not have the authority to require individual citizens to buy health insurance. Joining me now is the Virginia Attorney General who spearheaded this case, Ken Cuccinelli. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Glad to do it.
It's been a very busy week for you. I was there at your press conference right after this ruling came down, and you talked about trying to negotiate possibly with the administration to fast-track this to the Supreme Court. Doesn't sound like they want to do that, so you're going to the Fourth Circuit first. How do you feel your chances are there?
The Fourth Circuit used to be sort of a conservative bastion. It is much more a 50-50 court these days, and we're there all the time, being the Commonwealth, and they're headquartered in Richmond. So we're very familiar with that court. It'll be a challenge for us, but we've gotten by one challenge favorably. Really, the only ruling that ultimately matters is the Supreme Court, which is why those discussions about fast-tracking the case were so important. DOJ indicated they were not interested in skipping straight to the Supreme Court, even while expressing great confidence that ultimately they're going to win the case. So our view is, well, there's nothing more to develop. Let's just get to the final decision. America needs to remove the uncertainty surrounding the implementation of this incredibly complicated piece of legislation. So we find that unfortunate, but they are continuing to talk to us about fast-tracking it within the Fourth Circuit. So we'll see how they feel about that.
Okay, so people understand, if they're not familiar with the case, this is just about the individual mandate.
That's right.
Doesn't take on the rest of the health care legislation. But a lot of people think that mandate is a key linchpin to everything else. If you win on that
the
point...
The feds use the word linchpin.
Right.
They describe it that way.
So if you win on that point, does the rest of it fall apart?
The rest of the law may fall, but it must not necessarily fall. The federal government has admitted in their briefs that without the individual mandate, all of the insurance pieces have to fall because they all rely on it as a financing mechanism, as they frequently call it. But there's also a big piece of the bill that massively expands Medicare and Medicaid, and then there's the 400 plus other random provisions, which are just sort of in a tag-along portion of the bill, as I would call it. So those are the three sections. You may look at them. And because they didn't have a vote to spare in the Senate, literally not one vote, and only 3 to give in the House, if you take what they call the centerpiece of the legislation out, would it have passed at all? Our answer, of course, is no, and on that basis we're asking the court to strike the whole bill. Now, the district court judge wasn't ready to do that, but really that's a question for the Supreme Court. And
we have no doubt that if this case doesn't get there, there are several other lawsuits out there bubbling up. Almost half the states now have lawsuits in some form, others indicating they will join on or launch their own.
By the end of January, with the elections last month, we will have over half of the states suing as parties, as plaintiffs, their own federal government over the same issue, the individual mandate. I am unaware of that ever happening before in history, which really speaks to just how far overreaching the federal government is here.
I want to give you a chance to speak to a controversy that bubbled up a little bit this week. It's not new this week. It's been out there. The judge, Henry Hudson, in this case, owns a little bit of stock in a company called Campaign Solutions. They help a lot of people running their campaigns, mostly conservative folks. Your campaign had hired them for some help. There are some that said, you know, he should have never decided this case. He's too closely connected. How do you answer that?
That is, you know, that grenade came over the wall for some lefty blogs hours after the judge ruled that the United States couldn't get our case dismissed. What a shocking timing on that. And it's really just a meaningless cheap shot. The judge invested in a company that started by friends of his down the street from where he lived at the time. He has never known who their clients were. We didn't know he was a part owner. When we were using them for just processing credit cards on your website and that kind of thing, we didn't even spend $10,000 with the company, but didn't even know he was an owner of any kind. So he's been totally insulated from that, as many judges are with their holdings in various entities that they may own, and really had no bearing on the case. It's just kind of a cheap shot from the left. They're upset with this guy now. You notice they didn't do it before he ruled on anything. Yes, it only comes in after the fact.
Very unhappy. Okay, so no surprise here that the administration's also not happy about this when Stephanie Cutter, who's an assistant to the president on special projects, said, "We disagree with the ruling. We're confident that when it's all said and done, the courts will find the Affordable Care Act constitutional." What do you think? Ultimately, when it goes a couple blocks away to the Supreme Court?
If they were so confident, why not hurry on to the Supreme Court? They believe they're going to lose, and they won't admit it to the American people, and they want to drag this out as long as possible. That's really what they think up there. And that's no good for America. If that's where we're going to end up, let's get there quickly. Just by the one example that I represent, Commonwealth of Virginia, our governor has calculated that it'll cost us over $20 million just to get ready, not implementing anything, just to get ready to implement this law. That's just one state. And that doesn't count all the companies out there who are holding back on hiring because they don't know what their health care costs are going to be. Let's get to the end of the line on this, figure out what the Supreme Court's going to do. Hopefully, because this really goes way beyond health care, this case is really about liberty, because if they can order you to buy health insurance, they can order you to buy cars, books, asparagus, you name it. It is much broader, and the federal power that would be left if they prevail would be just extraordinary. It'd be tremendously sweeping. The Founding Fathers would have never expected anything like this.
Well, I'll have to fight him personally if we go on the asparagus. Not one of my favorites. So we will follow your case to the Fourth Circuit and ultimately to the Supreme Court if that's where it goes.
Thanks, Shannon. Good to be with you.
All right, Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli.